and what's happening in that chapter. It's unbelievable. That's why it's like the addendum to the gospel. So first of all, the fathers of the church see something in the fact that the sea represents the world and sin. It's not our natural element. We're made to be on land. So the sea is like the world. It's tumultuous. It's problems. And Jesus is on the shore of eternity. The shore represents eternity. And they're out in the world and they're fishing for men because they've been appointed to be the fishers of men, and they can't do it without Jesus. This is the thing. We can try to convert people. We can try to evangelize all we want, but we're not going to do it without him. He's the one that says cast in the net, and he's the one that brings the fish to us. But we have to listen to him and do what he says to do. So they're out in the world fishing. He helps them to catch a fish in. All the apostles bring the nets in and the fish, but then it's Peter himself who drags the net up onto the shore of eternity and puts it at the feet of Jesus. The fathers of the church saw something very significant in that. The shore is heaven. That's the world. The net is the church. And it caught 100 and how many fish? 153. I always used to say 157. Janet says there's 157 Heinz ketchup, and that's why you say 157. It's 153. So that's how I remember now. It's 153. And Jerome, St. Jerome, who translated the Bible from Hebrew and Greek into the Latin Vulgate, which became the authoritative Bible of the church, he said that the reason there's 153 fish is because in that time that it was known to be 153 different languages, tribes, nations, and tongues. So what does that represent? The whole world. That the church, the apostles have gone out into the whole world, out in the water, and they have collected from every nation, tribe, and tongue, people from and they all got them in the church, and the apostles all together brought them up. But then Peter, who has been given the keys and the primacy, his job is to bring it all up. And it says, what condition was the net? Even though it was so heavy, it didn't have a tear. And the Greek word for that is schism. The church does not have a tear, or a schizo does not have a schism. Why do you think this guy and the one behind there, John Paul II, have worked so hard along with Pope Benedict and now Francis to try and dialogue with the other denominations and the Eastern churches without giving up our Catholic distinctives, trying to work with them to bring them back? Why? Because it's their job to bring the net up at the end of the time without a tear in it. And there's a tear in it now, and they're trying to get it fixed quickly before the end of time. So that is how the fathers of the church saw that. Now, I want to touch on two other things, and then we'll go down and take a look at it. The second thing I want to mention is that it says that it was a charcoal fire. That Jesus said, you've heard this before? The charcoal fire. You can take a nap if you already heard this. The charcoal fire. And you know, the way I study the Bible, and I've written a lot of commentaries in Bible study books, and people say, how do you study the Bible, Steve? And I say, I read a passage, and I ask as many stupid questions as I can, and then I look for the answers. When I come across a verse that said charcoal fire, my first thing is, why charcoal fire? Why not just fire? Why does he say charcoal fire? Maybe there's a hint here. So I use my iPhone, which Janet's using right now to make a movie, and I have a program on there called Logos Bible Software. The Catholic version is called Verbum. And I go on there and I do a search, or every time it says charcoal fire in the Bible, it comes up there's only 2 times the word charcoal fire is used in the whole Bible. And both of those times are in the Gospel of John. Bingo! I know I've struck gold. Now I just have to take those 2 passages, study them, and meditate on them, and I'm going to find a vein of gold there. And boy, did I ever. The first charcoal fire is mentioned in Jerusalem, where we're going to be on Mount Zion, when Peter denies Jesus. He is being taken away. Peter has already denied. Judas has betrayed him. Peter is coming up with John. They go to the courtyard where Jesus is being tried at Caiaphas' house. And it's nighttime and it's cold. That's not insignificant when you're reading John's gospel. Nighttime and cold means that he is away from the Lord. When he's with the Lord, he's not cold and it's not night. But you get away from the Lord and it's now cold and it's night. And he's going to find a fire to get warm. And at the fire, a girl says, you're one of his. And he said, I am not. Another girl asks, are you one of his? And he says, I am not. And he denies the Lord. And the third time the girl asks him, are you one of his? And he curses, damn it, I am not.
Yeah, 3 times.
And the Bible says in the Gospel of Luke at that moment, this is one of the scariest, most poignant verses in the whole Bible. After the rooster crowed, it says, Jesus turned and looked at Peter. That's all it says. Peter had denied him 3 times in front of a charcoal fire. And when you do something 3 times in the Bible, 3 means ultimate. In Hebrew, they don't have good, better, and best. If you want to say good, if you want to say something is, say for example, the holiness of God, if it's holy, you say it once. If it's really holy, it's holy, holy. If it is ultimate holiness, it's holy, holy, holy. You know, the Indonesians, they're kind of a simple language, and if you want to say bus, it's that, but if it's plural, it's bus bus. I didn't know that. But if you want to say something 3 times, it's the ultimate. So when you do something 3 times, it's ultimate. You deny Christ 3 times, done. Ultimate denial, final, finished, nothing you can do about it. He's a cooked goose. Denied him 3 times, 3 questions in front of a charcoal fire, denied him 3 times. Now what happens here in the morning? It's no longer night, and he's no longer cold. It's now the morning, and the sun is rising. It's a new day, and there's a charcoal fire. And the Lord asks him 3 questions in front of the charcoal fire. Do you love me? I love you. Do you love me? I love you. Do you love me? I love you. And he allows him 3 times to erase, to redeem him from that 3-pointed curse. Now he has a 3-pointed affirmation, and Peter is redeemed from that curse. And no disciple, none of those apostles would ever be able to point to Peter and say, you're the one who denied him. We're not going to follow you. You're the one that denied him. Because they'll remember this charcoal fire where Jesus specifically gave him 3 questions to reverse and redeem what he had done in front of another charcoal fire. See how just looking at the word charcoal fire can help you? It's rich. That's why I love to study the Bible. You can ask Janet, if I have free time for a day, what will I do? That's exactly what I'll do. I don't golf. So now the last thing I want to mention about this is those 3 questions. Do you love me? We have a great disadvantage in English because we only have one word for love. I love my wife and I love a hot dog. What kind of word is that? It's an inadequate word, exactly. In Greek, you have 4 words for love. Eros, which is marital love. You have storge, which is the love of a mother dog for her puppies. It's an instinctual kind of instinct love of a mother for her child. You have eros. You have a phileo, which is friendship, fondness, affection kind of love. And the 4th one is agape, which is self-sacrificing, committal, unilateral love, unconditional. Jesus says to Peter, do you agape me? Do you have unconditional love for me? And Peter says, Lord, you know I phileo you. See, you don't see that in English. You know I'm your friend. Peter is second time, Peter, do you agape me, have this self-sacrificing love for me? And Peter says, Lord, you know I phileo you, I'm your friend. And the 3rd time Jesus says, Peter, do you phileo me, are you my friend? And Peter was grieved, he said this the 3rd time, and he said, Lord, you know I'm your friend. Why didn't Peter say agape? Why did he take it a step down and just say, I'm your friend? Because Peter had already declared to have agape love for Jesus in the past, hadn't he? I'll lay my life down for you. I'll love you. We won't let anybody take you. I'll die for you. That's agape love. And Peter had already failed. He showed his limitations and his weakness, and he learned humility now, and he wasn't going to state more than he could actually deliver. So he says, I'm your friend. But in the end, he does have agape love, because in the rest of that story that Jesus said right here, as then he said to Peter, when you were young, you went anywhere that you would. But when you are old, they will stretch out your arms and take you to a place you do not want to go. And John puts in the parentheses, because he wrote this after the fact, meaning the way that Peter would die. And the story goes in Rome, when we take our groups out the Via Appia, that Peter was fleeing Rome in 67 AD because he heard that they were going to kill him. And he met the Lord on the Via Appia going into Rome. And he said, Quo Vadis, which is the name of a church there now, marking this event. Quo Vadis Church, where are you going? And Peter said, Lord, they're out to kill me, so I'm fleeing from Rome. Quo Vadis, where are you going? And the Lord said, I'm going back into Rome to die again because you're denying me again. And Peter turned back around, and he went back into Rome. And he was put in the Mamertine prison with St. Paul. And on one cold morning, they were pulled out of that, and Paul was taken out to Via Ostia, and he was beheaded, where we have Mass with our groups when we go. And Peter was taken to the Nero circus, and there he was crucified, but he refused to be crucified. He was not worthy to die like his Lord and insisted on being crucified upside down. And he then proved that he had agape love for the Lord in the end. Some of us, we convert slowly. You know, Paul, it seems like it was boom, up there in that valley we looked at. Conversion was instantaneous. From that point on, he was devoted. Peter, a process. Takes time. I think I'm kind of like Peter. You know, it takes me a little time. And I'll just close with this. It's kind of this story of conversion is kind of like a man who's going to rent out a room in his house. And he puts up a sign, room to rent. And in England, it would be room to let. And God comes, said, I'd like to see the room. He shows him the room, and God says, I'll take it. And he says, but I'd also like to have the room across the hall. And the man says, oh, no, that's my room. I'll rent you this one room and no more. God says, that's fine. I like what I see, and if you'd ever like to rent more rooms, let me know. The guy needs another $100 a month after a while, and he says, you know what? He's a good renter. It's nice having him here. I think I'll rent this other room to him as well. He makes an extra $100 a month, and God says, but I'd also like the whole upstairs and part of the downstairs. No, that's mine. But after a while, he comes to God and says, you can have those rooms too. And before you know it, he ends up renting the whole house to God, and he gives up every room to God. And he found out that the house is more lively and full of life and more his than it ever was before. And it's the same with us. We keep little rooms to ourselves, and they're not for God. And finally, we give our whole life to God, and we find out that we're the happiest, most joyful people, and we're more of who we're supposed to be than we ever were before. And I think that's a little picture of our conversion. We give a little at a time. We're hesitant. Peter was like that. Some are like Paul. But anyway, this is what happened here. And I love to tell that. I did it quick, but